the Civil War marked the transition from an agricultural economy to an industrial economy. Industrialization marked a shift to powered, special-purpose machinery factories. This period of rapid industrialization encompassed most of the 19th century and became known as the Second Industrial Revolution. Production of goods moved from home businesses where products were generally crafted by hand to machine-aided production in factories. These quickly developing industries gave rise to a new urban culture as millions of Americans left their small towns and farms to work at jobs in cities, factories, and mines. The factory system generated a new social order for the many workers that migrated into the cities. For millions of Americans, the Industrial Revolution changed the very nature of their daily work. Previously, they might have worked for themselves at home or in a small shop. When they took factory jobs, they were working for a large company. The repetitive work often involved only one small step in the manufacturing process, so the worker did not see or appreciate what was being made. The work was often dangerous and performed in unsanitary conditions. Some women entered the workforce, as did many children. Child labor became a major issue. Dangerous working conditions, long hours, and concern over wages and child labor contributed to the growth of labor unions. In the decades after the Civil War, workers organized strikes and work stoppages that helped to publicize their problems. One especially significant labor upheaval was the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. Wage cuts in the railroad industry led to the strike, which began in West Virginia and spread to 3 additional states over a period of 45 days before being violently ended by a combination of vigilantes, National Guardsmen, and federal troops. Manufacturing increased quickly as the demand rose for new mass-produced products such as textiles, telephones, and light bulbs. The factories needed coal to power the machinery, and many new products were made from natural resources such as iron. As a result, new mines were opened across the country. The men that owned and ran these factories grew incredibly wealthy and became the most powerful individuals in economic, political, and social life in the U.S. To make this possible, natural resources were used to run factories, transportation, and other technologies. Iron was used to create steel and pig iron, which was used for railroad ties, bridges, and buildings. Andrew Carnegie was largely responsible for the great advances in steel production. Carnegie was an immigrant who came from Scotland at the age of 12. Over time, he progressed from bobbin boy in a cotton factory to a job in a telegraph office and then Pennsylvania Railroad. By 1865, he had made far-sighted investments which were concentrated in iron. Within a few years, he had organized or had stock companies, iron bridges, rails, and locomotives, and 10 years later, he ended up building the nation's largest steel mill on the Monongahela River in Pennsylvania. With the invention of the steam engine, coal replaced wood in fueling the steam engine and machinery used in various industries such as the steel industry. The ability to use a steam engine for oil drilling started an oil boom in the United States. The oil industry led to the creation of a petroleum refining industry. They transformed oil into kerosene and later gasoline for the automobile. The first transcontinental railroad was built between 1863 and 1869 to join the eastern and western halves of the United States. Begun right before the American Civil War, its construction was considered to be one of the greatest American technological feats of the 19th century. Known as the Pacific Railroad when it opened, it served as a vital link for trade, commerce, and travel, and opened up vast regions of the North American heartland for settlement. Shipping and commerce could thrive away from navigable watercourses for the first time since the beginning of the nation. Many Army veterans and Irish immigrants were the main workers on the Union Pacific, while most of the engineers were ex-Army men who had learned their trade keeping the trains running during the American Civil War. The Central Pacific Railroad, facing a labor shortage in the more sparsely settled West, relied on Chinese laborers who did prodigious work building the line over and through the Sierra Nevada mountains and then across Nevada to northern Utah. The construction of the railroad resulted in the end of most of the far slower and more hazardous stagecoach lines and wagon trains. The Transcontinental Railroad provided much faster, safer, and cheaper transportation for people and goods across the western two-thirds of the continent. American inventors like Samuel F.B. Morse and Thomas Edison created the array of new technologies that improved communication, transportation, and industrial production. As early as 1844, Samuel F.B. Morse had perfected electrical telegraphy. Soon afterward, distant parts of the continent were linked by a network of poles and wires. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell exhibited a telephone instrument. Within half a century, 16 million telephones would quicken the social and economic life of the nation. The growth of business was speeded by the invention of the typewriter in 1867, the adding machine in 1888, and the cash register in 1897. The linotype composing machine, invented in 1886, and rotary press and paper folding machinery made it possible to print 240,000 8-page newspapers in an hour. Thomas Edison's incandescent lamp eventually lit millions of homes. The talking machine, or phonograph, was perfected by Edison, who, in conjunction with George Eastman, also helped develop the motion picture. These and many other applications of science and ingenuity resulted in a new level of productivity in almost every field.